Welcome back, everybody. It's wall framing video number 3. We are continuing to talk about basic wall frames. For this video, you're going to need a piece of paper. You need something to write with. So take the notes I tell you to take, and then at the end, take a photo of it, load it in Canvas. That'll get you credit for this assignment. So we're going to go through a few different components. We're going to talk about those components, their definitions, what they are, what they do. Plus, we'll go through information about building doors, how to lay out doors properly, and just information you're going to need to know before the next class period. All right, so starting with rough openings. Let's get going here. Rough openings, outlined in blue here and here. It's an opening in the framework formed by framing members. When I say framing members, just like with floor framing, it can be any component here when you say a framing member, something framing for the wall. So it's formed by framing members. It is usually a door or a window. So when you have an opening in the framework, there's usually going to be a window or a door going in that opening. Now, it could be a doorway. It doesn't necessarily have to have a swinging or closing door. Or it could be just an opening in the wall that might not be a window, but it might be a pass-through between maybe your kitchen and your living room, things like that. One thing to note is your rough opening is always larger than the door or window itself. So if the door or window is going in, your rough opening is always larger than the given size of the door. It gives you a chance to put it in and get it set just right, like level and plumb. Okay. All right, make sure you have this down, and we'll go on to the next slide. First part of your rough opening will be your header, outlined in blue here and here. Definition, copy this down. It's a horizontal structural member that supports the load over openings such as a door or window. So you can see it's a large structural framing member here. So essentially it's a beam that goes above your window or door. They form the top of your rough opening. So here's your rough opening. Your header is always going to be the top of your rough opening. Okay? Make sure you have that down, and we'll go on to the next component. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and I'll talk about this later on too, is that your headers can be different sizes based on the width of your opening. The bigger your opening is, the wider it is, the bigger your header needs to be. Smaller opening, smaller header. Also, if it's an interior or exterior wall, whether it's a load-bearing wall or a non-load-bearing wall, that's going to play into the size of your header. But for right now, just notice there are different ways to build headers. Okay, next one. Your trimmer stud, or you notice in parentheses it says jack stud. Folks, I'm going to call this a jack stud 99% of the time. Sometimes I will say trimmer stud, but your book calls these trimmer studs. Most every carpenter is going to call them a jack stud, so I want you to know both terms. Okay, highlighted in blue here and here, and here and there. It is the short studs that form the sides of rough openings for doors and windows. And they support the weight of the header. So, listening to that definition and looking at the photo, you can see the blue line here and here. Notice it's the inner board of this little stud pack here. On any wall, like window or door, you're going to have multiple studs at the sides. One's a jack stud. We're going to talk about what the other stud here in a minute. The jacks are on the inside, so they actually form the sides of the rough opening, but they also sit underneath the header. These other boards run all the way to the top stud, your top plate. So your jacks will support the headers, and they are on the insides of your rough opening. Okay, you guys got those notes? Fantastic. I don't hear any objections. So here we go. The second board that's in that pack of two is a king stud. Now notice here it's highlighted in blue, and it's not right next to that opening. It's one board over. Okay. So here's the definition here. It is a full-length stud next to the trimmer or jack stud in a wall opening. So, and it's with windows and doors. You're going to have king studs. Okay? And then king studs are fastened to the headers and the jacks. So you do the face nails through the king stud into the header, and then jack stud back into the king stud. So they're connected together. And it provides stiffening for that wall opening, for that wall frame. Essentially, if you did not have king studs and you just had a header set on top of a jack, there could be a spot where it could twist and wobble. But now we have a third board that connects the first two together, so it makes it stiff and strong and durable. Again, it's going to help fight any kind of high winds from tornado or hurricane or any kind of seismic activity from earthquakes. So it helps stiffen those. And again, you're going to have king stud and jack studs on any, whether it's a door opening or even window openings. Okay, you have your header, jacks, and kings. Okay, so this is the last component we're going to talk about today. I'm going to jump ahead into the slides and let's focus on some framing and door openings here. Okay, so here's that same image, only just focused on the door frame itself. You've got these are your jack studs here, your king studs are up here, and your headers here. You've got your top plate, bottom plate, and a couple of on-center studs. Okay, so that's essentially, this is what we're looking at here. These, the door framing components, this is what we're going to focus on here. Now, layout for this is going to be a little bit different. There's going to be a little extra math involved, but I'll lay it out nice and easy, so do not get too anxious. Okay, here's a 3D picture of a wall frame, and you've got a door opening here. There's going to be an interior wall partition and the window opening here. Now, on your set of plans, oftentimes how you find the exact spot for this door, this window, and this wall, they're going to give you a distance from a corner, usually to the center. Especially if it's a door or window rough opening, they'll tell you it'll be so many feet and inches to the center of this door. So you can see there's an imaginary line drawn down the center here. Okay, the distance from the corner to that line, that's our center mark. And you'll notice what I did here, I drew a little C with a line through it. So a C with a line through it, that's going to be our center location. Okay, because what does this look like? It looks like a cent sign, right? So this is what we're going to use to denote the center and location of our doors and windows. And same thing here, the distance from the corner to the center of this window is our cent mark here. So again, it'll be specific. It'll say 3 feet and 6 inches or 17 feet and 3 3/8 inches, whatever it may be. It'll give you distance from some reference point, usually from a corner of a wall to the center of that line. I just want to make that part clear. All right, so it's going to look something like this on the plans here. So from the middle of this wall, or it could even be to the end of this wall, it'll give you a reference point on your plans, 6 foot 3 inches to the center of this window. Okay, 8 feet 7.5 inches to the center of this double window pack. Right, 5 feet 3 inches to the center of this doorway. So you'll see things like that on your plans, and that will happen here. This is a little bit different when you have bathroom type and bedroom doors. Those are a little bit different. But when you have windows, like you'll have a measurement for the center of this window, center of that window, center of here, there, here, there. All these are going to have measurements. I only have a few of them written on here just as an example. But all around your rooms, all around your thing, it'll give you distances from the center of those windows and doors. Okay? So a lot of you are in some kind of a math class, and I'm sure you're sitting there with the teacher droning on and on and on. Yeah, does that sound familiar? But you're probably thinking, when am I ever going to use this math? You ever been in algebra like, dude, when am I ever going to use this? Dun, da, da, da. Here we go. We're going to use algebra, a basic algebra equation in this class to do a construction task here. Okay? So it's going to help us properly lay out door and window rough opening center locations. So what I want you to do for your notes, I want you to write down, actually, I want you to write down this right here. Copy this down. Okay. Here's our algebra equation. W plus 2 divided by 2. That's a pretty simple equation. It's not rocket science. Pretty simple. This is algebra right here. What this is going to give us is the distance from the center, our center location to our jack studs. So when we look at the plans, we say, oh, hey, this is 6 feet 3 inches to the middle of this window, right? Or say it's a door there, 6 feet 3 inches to this door, right? Now we take the size of that window, we plug it in because W equals window or door width, and we take because W equals the width, so we take that width, we plug it in here, we add a couple inches, divide it by 2, that's going to give us from the center mark over to where our jack studs are going to be. This will make a little bit more sense when I am drawing this out and when you're working with the whiteboards like we did in the last class. Okay. Also, if you don't have this down, hit the pause button. Copy just what I've got circled here, and then move on. Okay. So door and window dimensions, there's several different ways that you can note the dimensions that you'll see them on the plans. But one thing I want you to notice is it's always there's going to be 2 dimensions, width and height. It's always going to be width first, then height. Okay, they're never going to tell you how tall it is, then how wide it is. It's always width by height, whenever you're listed here. So here are some common sizes. This here is inches only, 32 inches by 80 inches. Okay, this is something that you see, and for starters, I'm going to give you this kind of information. It's inches only. So you'll take this width, plug it into that formula I just gave you, and that's going to give you your algebra stuff. Okay, so 32 by 80. That's 32 inches wide by 80 inches tall. Now, other ways to write them in, you can write them in feet and inches. You can see here using the quotation marks, 2 feet, 8 inches by 6 feet, 8 inches. So 1 quotation means feet, 2 quotations means inches. And there's that. Now, another way you're going to see it right here, they just use hyphens or dashes. 2-8, that's 2 feet, 8 inches. 6-8, 6 feet, 8 inches. Or if you think back a few weeks ago when we were going through the books and looking at those floor plans, I was talking about, hey, what are the size of the exterior doors? What are the size of the interior bedroom 2 door? Things like that. There's just 4 numbers altogether. No dashes, no quotation marks. 2-8, 6-8, that means the same thing. That's feet, inch, inch. So width, height, feet, and inches, feet, and inches. Okay, so you might encounter any or all of these in your building drawings. But I want you to know that this is the way they're set. Again, most of what I'm going to give you is going to be inches only in this class. As we move on, get more advanced, we get into stuff that you'll probably see on plans. Okay, so here we go. Now, to do a door layout, you're going to need to know several different things. Number one, you're going to need to know the size of the door. So here's our door layout. We have a 36-inch door. So 36-inch door, right? We're going to need to know the center mark of that door. It is going to be centered at 48 inches. That's supposed to be inches, okay? So whenever I give you a layout, I'm going to give you that information right there. The width, so the size of your door or window, and then it is centered at and I'm going to give you the center mark location. Okay? And then so we follow these steps here. Let's see. And the reason in our thing, why do we add 2 inches? Okay? When you're given a door size, this does not include the framework that goes around the door or the window. This is literally the swinging part of the door. Okay? So your door is going to be 32 inches wide, the part that swings. But the framework around it has some width too. So remember when I said rough openings are always larger than your window or door size? Adding this extra 2 inches will help have enough space for the door, plus the framework to go around it, and it gives you a little bit of play. So if your frame is just a little bit off, you can still set your door nice and flat. Okay? But you're going to add 2 inches to the overall width and height of your door. Now, some people will add 2.5. Some people will add 3. But the base, the minimum you need to add is 2. Okay, so at least add 2 inches. It allows space for the frame plus space to level it from the door. Okay, here's our step number 1. Start with finding the center point of the door. So I'm going to measure out. I would take my tape. Imagine this is your bottom plate here. I'll take my tape and I'm going to put a mark and a center here. Can you see my markings? The C with the line through it, that's my center mark. And that's over at 48 inches. Okay? Now, next thing, I'm going to measure out for the center point. So here's step 2. And this is that W plus 2 divide by 2. This is where that comes into play. Okay? Let me find a little space here. There we go. So W plus 2 divided by 2. Okay? Now, we have a 36-inch door. So W is going to be our size here. So 36 plus 2 divided by 2. All right? That's what we're trying to solve for. So what's 36 plus 2? 38. Oh yeah, by the way, copy this part of this down. I want you being familiar with the way that this runs here. So W plus 2 divided by 2 equals, and then now we plugged in the width of our door, which is 36. Add 2 divided by 2. That comes down. Whoop. And then here, okay, so just extend 38 plus, or 38 divided by 2. That equals 19 inches. Okay, so it's going to be 19 inches from the center mark to the jack on the right side, and 19 inches from our center mark to the jack on the left side. Now that we know this, we'll come back over here and measure out from the center point. I'm going to measure out 19 inches. Now this is not to scale, so don't give me a bunch of flack. Oh, Mr. Wallace, that's not to scale. I want you to know the process. We're looking at the process here. So we measured out. Okay, there's an arrow there, arrow there. So we went from the center mark, measured left and right, right and left, the center mark. Now our trimmer studs we place on the outside of those marks. So, and our jack and trimmers, I'm going to write a J. Put a J. Now, when we were doing stud framing and joist framing, X's were always on the same sides of the lines. In this case, we're working outward now. So you can see the jack on the right is on the right side, the jack on the left is on the left side of that line. So they're going to work away from the center. Never, ever, ever put your jacks on the insides of these lines. You should never go on the inside. You put them on the insides of your lines, the opening is not going to fit your door or your window. Okay? You need to make sure always go out. There's that. Now, once you have these, you need to measure over one more time for the thickness of that jack so you can get your king stud on the back side of that. So we're going to measure over on each side of these. This will be 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches from my red line to my purple line. And then I'm going to have my king sit on the outside of that. Now, that's all I really need to have this door opening marked. You could measure over another 1.5 inches and have a series of 3 lines. 1, 2, 3. But it's not really necessary. The only line you really need to know is this line in between the king and the jack. Okay, so if you have that, you're okay. So at that point, you can stop and you can move and you can change over to on center studs. Now we'll start working with our on center studs. And it's the same process as what we've done. You measure over 16 3/4. Measure over 32 3/4. Now again, this is not to scale. Your other one here, 48 3/4 would be your next one, but that's going to be where your center mark is, and there's going to be a door there. So you would have a mark here, but we're not going to put any marks there because if you put a stud there, you can't put the door in. Okay? So you skip until you're beyond your king stud. So then you come over here and you find whatever your next measurement in the sequence is. 64 3/4. Next one over. 80 3/4. So on and so forth. And always have an X on each end. Okay? So in the process here, you find your center mark, wherever your center mark is, 48 inches, you mark that. Then you go back and you do W plus 2 divided by 2. That'll tell you distance from your center mark to your jack. That's how you get your jacks in the right location. And then measure over 1.5 inches. Put another line, put your kings outside of that. And again, you see how they work away from the center. Just the jacks and kings work away from the center. Center, jacks, kings. Then once you have your kings in place, then you can come back in and do your on-center studs. Okay? This looks like a lot of chicken scratch, but again, when we go through this as a class, it's going to make a little bit more sense. Right? So this will be we'll do this kind of stuff in class here. So again, I'm going to give you the information, like the door size and the location and the studs. So it's first, you mark your center point, then you go back up, you do your W plus 2 divided by 2, and then you do your studs. Again, this will be for practice in class here, but this essentially is what you are making it look like in the end. You've got your common studs in place, you've got your center mark, you've got your jacks, you've got your kings. So that's what we're shooting for. Okay? There's some more practice stuff. Okay, one thing that we're going to do in here a lot is we're going to be working with single doors, just single opening doors. But there's a lot of doors when you have patio doors, French doors, bifold doors where your opening gets wider. And when your opening gets wider, you're going to need more jacks and kings to support that. So this is just a little chart that talks about, hey, if you have a 10-foot opening and you're running with 24-inch studs, then you need 2 jacks and 3 kings to help support that opening. So you'll have to take this into account when you have your jack and you're marking your jacks and kings. So if you need 2 jacks, you have to measure over several times before you find your king spots. Okay, but I'll talk more about that in later. So once you have your plates laid out, then you can start building it. So, and here's your process of building it. And I want you all to copy these down here. First is layout, measure, and cut your pieces. So you do all your layout, and think back to our first video. I was talking about, hey, once you get your stuff laid out, then you can go measure and cut your pieces. So you measure and cut, you cut all your on-center studs, your king studs, your jacks, your header, get all that stuff together, cut, ready to go. Then you're going to install the king studs. That's the first boards to get nailed up. Also your end studs, so the ones on the ends, the king studs, get those in for your wall section. So install your king studs. And then I like to install the header next before doing the jacks, but some people will do the jacks before the header. But I like to do the header first, especially when it's built like this. If there are jacks, if there are little cripple studs above here, and like this header is down lower, then it makes sense to put the jacks in first. But if it's like this, your header's up to the top, do your header, then you put your jacks in. Your jacks are nailed to your kings, and then after that, you install all your regular on-center studs. Now, this is the kind of stuff that we will be working on in class, putting together these wall frames. So once you have those 5 points copied, go on here. The next video we're going to talk about is window framing. So I had you copy down a few definitions, a few the algebra equation, and a few of the steps. So take a photo of that, submit that on Canvas. That'll be how you get credit for this assignment today. All right. I'll see you in the next video talking about window frames.